now.
I just love you guys, and I appreciate you being here for us, and I appreciate you doing the things that you're doing, and I appreciate you building this. Please like this episode as well as every other episode you do enjoy going on right now that I'm very excited about. And I see Doge, and I see the realignment of the educational system coming together for a real unique opportunity that we haven't had in a long time. And that's exciting more and more each day. It all comes back to coming back to yourself, taking your, you have three brains, right? You have the brain of the head, you have the brain of the heart, and you have the brain of the gut, gut instinct, right? I would love to really be able to get into some comfortable situations where we can start feeding back into the community that we haven't had in a long time. If we take the right approach, we have the ability to really dramatically affect not only the children growth, we could start turning revenues and rolling them into, for instance, here in this small town, seeing what kind of effects we have. We have coming up very shortly, as much as we should. And I think this is probably the strongest because it has emotion as well. And then those two signal to the brain to send out the chemicals that do the work that needs to be done according to whatever I have already talked a little bit about it with Emma on Emma Lynn and Grandpa Rod. Hey, I didn't say hi. I kept you in the green room. You'll see her back in a second. That was a total mess up on my part. I was trying to take care of other things. We'll catch you in a second, okay, Adrienne? I'll bring you back on. So that's our guest this morning. It looks like we got a few people strolling in already. Had a dynamic show last week. We broke a attendance record. We've broken. God, we were at 7,000 as the highest. I think it was 7,400, almost 7,500 for about 6 months was the peak. And then we've got a bunch of 5,000 people in the audience, a bunch of 3,000 people and, audience members. And then weekend before last you guys know this, it was, we broke that record as far as attendance by our peeps, our tribe, us community, us folks, on Emma Lynn and Grandpa Rod show, which airs every Saturday at 11:35 Central Standard Time, and that's where the Regeneration School Project came out of. And part of that program is giving kids, teenagers, the voice. Not only to communicate and have confidence, and there's a whole storyline behind that. I take too much time trying to get through it, waiting for this. I've been very much looking forward to this topic. You all know how important the family, and I was going to say in the Regeneration School Project, you're also working with, because you can work with the children, work with the kids through school, and build these different parameters, build these different abilities, these different core abilities. And for us, for here, it's all about building from the inside out, right? Building the great middle class from the inside out, one conversation at a time. And meaning that we're Adrienne and I were just talking backstage in the green room. Oh, I forgot to tell you, don't touch the green colored chocolate covered peanuts. That's the only, you can have anything else you want in there. And there's plenty of great snacks. Just leave the, I don't know why they put them in there, but they like to tempt people and then harass me if somebody actually takes a nibble off of a couple of those. Looks like it's a little slower moving coming in this afternoon here. We had a huge impact like I said, we broke a attendance record of over 8,000 people. Emma Lynn's got the second highest attendance at 70, actually, I'm sorry, third highest at 69.98. And then we have an AI show that's every Tuesday with my son, Brandon. He has his own show. You can see him on YouTube at Brandon Duff, BrandonDonDuff. But you'll see him tomorrow. We're talking about AI and automation, and really want to kind of, there's a difference between the two, and get into that subject. But as we're talking today, we have a wonderful guest, the author of Broken, Life Outside the Lines. Adriene has grown up, and you guys know this. About 2 weeks ago, I did a preview to the show because I've been so interested in it. I'll use that excuse, but the additional reason was because I booked her on 2 different dates, and she actually only booked 1 date. So in order for you folks to get ready for this show, and I'm not expecting, but I'm assuming we're going to have some really dynamic questions that come out of this show for Adriene, because I mean, I don't know how much she wants me to get into, and really I'm just saying this out loud because she can't tell me anyway. I know she can hear me. How you doing? Keep your hands off the peanuts. I see you looking over there. The impact of your childhood, like she said, it's generational, and that ties in on the back end with our regeneration school project, because we're starting a 5th core subject. You know, you've got your math, English, science, history, and then you need to life. Let's call it life. You know, preparation for life. We're developing this program. By the way, sign up for our newsletter as well. We just started a newsletter, and that's going to give insights, backstories, Barbieisms, which you guys all start to get familiar with. You know, Rod Duff and producer Barbie. She and I have been together for several decades, and over time, she has always had, but I've nicknamed it called Barbieisms, and they're things that right out of the mouth, they're kind of a construct or a twist on some sort of kind of education. And when you first hear it, it's like, oh, wow, that's it. And then you go, oh, I get it. So we'll have a section in there. I've always wanted to write a book, and now we're going to start it out in the newsletter there, what we call Barbieisms, and that'll be for people who join in and add to the newsletter. We're going to be reviewing past shows, as well as giving updates on what the shows are coming up, so that you guys can all be prepared. I've always touted how amazing and impressive you all are, in that you have an amazing thirst for viable information. And just to finish my point, in the regeneration program, we're teaching kids this new way of education, meaning it's instead of pulling, it's a push, in that kids are taking more on themselves and learning higher end skills in a project-based academic solution. And we had 2 hours of that just last hour. So there's plenty of information in there with that expert, Jessie. She was amazing, out of Sarasota, Florida. I'm very jealous. I like I tell her, it's too bad she has to live in such a horrible area of the country, but she's surviving it. Looks like we got about 50 people coming in. Get yourself comfortable. I want to talk about, as we talk about kind of on a daily basis now. You know, we go 6 days a week. So you can teach the children this educational program, but you also got to have the ability to work with the parents, because you can have one half of the thing really learning on things, but if there's, you know, when you're getting home, you want to make that a much more valuable overall inset. In other words, we're on the same page, and the word generational that Adriene brought up just hits the bone, because you can only teach what you know. You can only you can only express what you know, unless you're making stuff up, which happens. But at the end of the day, the generational aspect is what her book addresses, as well as her story and her backstory and her journey now addresses. And in that same vein, I really believe that we really have a generation away from preparing, getting to a point where our society, and by extension the world, is ready and entering into a utopia, because we haven't, as a society in this area, come as far as we could, because there's so much. And don't get me wrong, there's all sorts of families out there, we all know this, and there's different levels, and there's different issues, and there's different things that affect all that. But I got to tell you this, with 159 people in the audience right now, I'm sorry, 183 now people in the audience. I'm done being the color man. I've done my job. I want to bring on the actual expert that can make the show look professional and, much better than me. Can you help me out, Adriene, and bail me out here? Hear your story a little bit first. Oh,
absolutely.
208 people on. They know you're coming on, so they're like jumping in here. And this has been a subject I've been very excited to talk to you about. And you said, can you give your backstory? And I said, not just 90 seconds. I want some minutes out of this. I want to get some color out of the layers. You're on stage. I'm going to back. And I told you I may be jumping on and off of this shortly, because I have a feeling the questions are going to start pouring in. 296 now. Yeah. So,
wow.
Please.
Well, Rod, first foremost, I want to thank your audience and you for this opportunity to share my story. Without platforms like this, my story goes nowhere. So first, gratitude. I am Adriene Caldwell. I have written the book, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, and it is a challenging book to read. There are some very, very dark moments. It's the story of my life from early childhood to my early 20s. And during this time, I'm going to go ahead and give the trigger warnings. During this time, I was either the witness to or the victim of the sexual assault of a young girl, the drowning death of another child, emotional and physical abuse, extreme poverty, mental illness, homelessness, horrifically abusive foster care, bulimia, drug and alcohol addiction, pedophilia, death, suicide, and incest. So I have had quite a life, quite a tumultuous life. And my backstory, it really starts with my family. Really, even before I was born, my grandfather and grandmother, military family, relocated frequently. And that ingrained in the family, especially when you move every 3, 4, 5 years, you learn to have acquaintances, but you don't really develop these strong bonds with anybody outside the family. Just the sheer fact that you're relocating, you're going to leave. You don't invest in anyone really outside the family. Now, my grandfather was schizophrenic. He was eventually retired from the Navy due to his schizophrenia. It's on his DD 214. And he was a very unkind, mentally ill individual. He sexually abused my mother and was just crazy in his beliefs. And he moved the family from North Carolina to Houston, and then he abandoned the family. So my grandmother and the 4 children, he abandoned them in Houston and left for his mistress, who had been on the side for the last 20 plus years. He had made the commitment. He said, "Wait for me," to his mistress. let my children get out of school, and then I will leave my wife and children for you. And that's what he did. But that set up the storyline, if you will, for what was to come. So my mother had me. My mother was one of 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. My mother was the eldest girl. There was my Uncle John, the eldest son. And around the time that my mother had me, 19 years old, many people are not aware, schizophrenia is unlike many other mental illnesses. It doesn't really develop until your late teens and early 20s.
True.
So as I was growing and developing, so was my mother's schizophrenia. And that sets the backdrop to the story, if you will. And my grandmother, so grandfather absconded, with him his military pension, his income. So that left a hole financially. The children, not children, they were adults by this time, they were scrambling to fill. We had moved from the rental house into a 2-bedroom apartment, and every one of them, except for the youngest, she was a senior in high school. She was allowed to remain in school, but my mother and the 2 brothers had to go to work just to survive, to support my grandmother and us. So my grandmother watched me during the day while my mother worked. And my grandmother really protected me from my mother's instability. And I
saw you see that. I saw you see that
Yeah.
comment come up.
Yes,
You're
yes, I
affecting people.
did.
We're over 1,300 people, by the way.
Oh
Already
my gosh!
in
Wow,
the audience.
wow,
So
that's
go
amazing.
on.
Thank you.
I mean, I told you this story. I mean, 70% of people today, and not what you're dealing with, because I don't even want to say another level. This is, I mean, you already went through the overview, but 70% of people, children and adults, deal with some sort of mental illness, right? We know this. This isn't just throwing numbers out there. This is statistics. So go on with your story, but I wanted you to see this and just hover on this for a moment, because as for people that are just listening, what we're talking about is Noni. Oh, I wonder if this is the Noni I know, but you are being heard by me. I've had much abuse myself. Love ya. Be strong. So go on.
Thank you. So my grandmother was my shield. She was my guardian. She was my protector. And my first contact with a traumatic event was when I was 5 years old. We were, my little girlfriend, Jane, my little boyfriend, we were all 5, 6 years old, and playing in the grassy area of the apartment complex. There was a man there with his black Labrador, and we were running in circles, just laughing, playing with the dog. And my grandmother came out and checked on me and saw that I was having a great time and that I was fine. So she went back into the apartment, and then a little while later, the man said, "Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I have to take the dog for a walk in the woods. Do you want to come with me?" And we all agreed because we didn't want to stop playing with the dog. We were having fun. And for me,
how old were you? How old were you at this time, roughly?
5 years old.
Okay, yeah.
And for me, it was the first time that I had friends, because up to this point, it had been my family, our core family. So we didn't want the fun to end. My grandmother had come out. She actually knew the man. He lived in the complex. So we start walking in the woods. My friend Jane is holding his hand. The dog's in front, walking down this path. And I come to these two stones that I couldn't step on. I would have to step over. And all of a sudden, alarm bells just start ringing in my mind. And I was holding my boyfriend, little boyfriend, 5 years old boyfriend, his hand, and I dropped it and I just ran back to my apartment. And I said, Jane's in the woods with Mr. Montgomery. Jane's in the woods. And my uncle ran out and came back 10, 15 minutes later. And he was carrying her. She was laid across his arms. She had been violated with branches by Mr. Montgomery. And I saw her across my uncle's arms. Her little sundress was just covered in blood. And my uncle started screaming. He didn't realize I would be in the living room when he walked in. He was screaming, go in your room, get in your room. But it was too late. I had already seen Jane, and it's something that I, to this day, cannot get out of my head, witnessing what I did. And I would later learn, just overhear from the adults, that she had to have surgery. She might not be able to have children. And that evening, I sat in a patrol car with the police officer, giving a description of Mr. Montgomery and explaining what had happened. But that inner voice, that at 5 years old, it saved me from having potentially the same thing happen. Now, my family, they're not well developed when it comes to emotional awareness or mental awareness. They had gone through hell themselves by my grandfather as well as grandmothers. They were both physically abusive with my aunts and uncles. And so nobody sat down and talked to me about what I had witnessed. It was very much just swept under the rug, move along. There was no thought of therapy or anything like that. So 5 years old was my first introduction to trauma. My inner voice, which would later, throughout the course of my life, has saved me multiple times. And the times I've ignored it, I've suffered the consequences. So that is one thing I would absolutely encourage everyone. If you have that inner voice, if you get that gut feeling, listen to it. Your sixth sense, or whatever you want to call it, abide by it. It can potentially save you some harm. So
I don't want to stop. No. I don't want to stop you, but I want to hover here for a second, because we talk about this in that, we have three brains, right? We have the brain, we have the heart, which is probably the most powerful because it's attached to feelings, and then we have what you just said, the gut instinct. And what happens is these are the actual brains, and then they feed up to here, which then sends the chemicals out to react whatever it is. And if you're ignoring your gut feeling, then your body's not actually able to do what it should be doing. And the more you do what you just said, where you're training yourself to listen to that, and we don't enough. I assume you agree with that.
I do.
As a general rule, we don't agree, or we don't do that enough. But it's gut instinct. I mean, it's been around. That term's been around for a while. So go ahead. I just wanted to stay on that for a second, and because there's a lot of, first of all, you got a lot of support coming on, and the lady here, or the person here, is it obviously has a horrific story, and there's a lot of healing that can be done through talking through your story itself. And so go on.
Thank you. And that's really my hope for sharing my story, is to help other people. Maybe they're not at a place yet that they're able to share, but I hope by sharing my story, it at least lets them know you're not alone. Audience listeners, you are not alone. Even if you're not speaking, just know that we are here, that there is a community and there is support out there. So
People don't know that, and that's a big problem in itself, in that people would speak, but they're, until they see some, it's like the old story, the 4-minute mile was unattainable. Now it's the 2-minute, 2-hour marathon, which is a whole nother story. But for instance, the 4-minute mile, I think we all remember this. And then somewhere in the 80s, somebody broke it, like 3 minutes and, I don't know, 58 seconds. And then what happens after that? Boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. Now people see it can be done. They make that connection and they gain that confidence by you. So yes, your story is important, and to listen to that has other people right here today. I mean, I can see it. We can see it unfolding in front of us. And I just want to add David's comment here. Wow, Adriene's story is so powerful. What a message of resilience. And that's what people need to know, is they can come out the other end of this and like you're talking about, be actually stronger. And nobody ever wishes anybody to go through any of this. Yeah. And this is unfortunately a dramatic, maybe a more dramatic case than a lot of people, but it's not as uncommon as you would think. And that's the problem.
And trauma is trauma. There is no point comparing trauma. When you go through it, it is pain. You are suffering. I never compare.
Hey, Adriene, can I cut you off for a second?
Yes, please.
We have 4,494 people on.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Right. Thank you. So that was my first instance where I started to learn little girls are not safe in this world. And I'll extend that to little children are not safe. At least I didn't feel safe. And the second time I felt that was my mother. Well, I have to share. My grandmother passed when I was 7 years old. And so I was exposed to my schizophrenic, physically abusive mother. I no longer had my grandma to shield me and to protect me from my mother and her idiosyncrasies, which would later become just full-blown insanity. She was schizophrenic. She was untreated, and it deeply impacted my life and later the life of my brother. So my next experience with trauma, my mother was unable to support our life independently. She didn't have a profession or a vocation. She had me at 19. She had wanted to be a nurse, but having me derailed everything. And then when my grandfather absconded, that gave her no choices. She had to work. She had to earn income. And of course, it was minimum wage jobs, working as many hours as possible. So ultimately, we would bounce between two sets of aunts and uncles. The one set, Aunt Rose and Uncle John, they were very blue collar, but hardworking. And then my other set, they were pot smoking, lazy, dirty. Go ahead, Rod.
Hippies?
White trash. White trash.
Okay. I think I'd
So,
rather be a hippie than white trash. That says everything.
Hippie.
We're almost at 6,000 people on, by the way.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for allowing me to share my story. So we were living with the not so great aunt and uncle. And I was raised here in Houston, Texas, and it was summer. Summers are just smeltering in Houston. So everybody and their friend was in the swimming pool, and my family subscribed to many old wives' tales, including the one that if you eat, you have to wait 30 minutes before you get back in the water. So
I know that.
I was sitting on a lounger, just, waiting my 30 minutes, just, 7 years old, wanting to go play in the swimming pool. And the swimming pool was packed, absolutely packed. Like you couldn't go 3 feet without touching somebody or running into somebody. And as I was just looking over the pool, I noticed this girl, and she was face down, very close to the wall, and her hair was splayed out around her, just floating in the water. And around the time that I noticed and started having alarm bells go off, my uncle realized that she was drowning and literally ran to her, dragged her body out of the water, did chest compressions, mouth to mouth, but it was too late. So my second real experience with the world was seeing a girl drowned. And once again, it wasn't discussed. Nobody. There was no therapy offered. There was no familial discussion of it. We never discussed what had happened, and it really set me up for a life of expecting to be in danger. I spent almost all of my childhood afraid, and
Yeah, I mean, how else could you be? I mean, you're talking about the biggest thing of all, and we talked about earlier having parental tools to be able to raise and develop with your children and so forth. The fact that you've said that twice, and for one for each instance, just goes to show that's the most devastating. It's devastating in either case. But then when the family just kind of doesn't say anything, the developing mind doesn't have a way to process that because they weren't taught, right? Because that's what being a kid is about, is getting ready for life. And if your parents or your aunts, your uncles, the family isn't communicating about what this means, or they probably just don't know enough that they should be communicating. So maybe it's deficit, maybe it's just not knowing, maybe it's being scared. What do I say to this kid, our kid, our child? It's whatever that is, it doesn't exist. So now you're not only not prepared for that, but now you're kind of underprepared because that experience happened and you have to process it with a 7-year-old mind, and then earlier with a 5-year-old mind. At 5 years old is when you're kind of setting your personality. And then 2 years later, you have this right in front of you. And then in every case along the way, it sounds like the family dynamics was about, I don't know how to handle this, so we're just not going to. And that's devastating for a kid, for a child.
it goes back to generational.
It's a key word.
My aunts and uncles, they did not have great role models. My grandmother was wonderful to me, but back then, when my grandmother and grandfather were raising the two girls, the two boys, it was a dictatorial family. My grandfather was the patriarch. What he said went. He was higher up as an enlisted man, and he expected that if he gave a command, it would be obeyed instantly without question. And that filtered down to their children. And so they didn't have great role models themselves. And my grandfather, before he abandoned the family, he sexually abused my mother, and he would have done it to the other daughter, except the two sons literally blocked the door to her room so that my grandfather couldn't get to her. And remember, he's schizophrenic, and he's telling his children and his wife, my grandmother, that the boys should sleep with my grandmother and their sisters, and the same for the sisters, that they should be with the brothers and with him. And I've often wondered, of late, I didn't have this realization until much later on, but I wonder if my mother took the abuse in order to protect her younger sister, the baby of the family. So they were not given role models to live by, or how to process trauma. So my mother, after my grandmother passed, we bounced between my two sets of aunts and uncles, living very, very different lives. And my mother's mental illness was just worsening. She would go into her bedroom, and which we shared, by the way. We were poor. Not as poor as we were going to be, but poor. And it was very, very difficult. And we never discussed anything about my grandfather. And if you were to ask my Uncle John about his father, my grandfather, he's said on multiple different occasions that if he ever saw the effer again, he would kill him. And that's not an exaggeration. I believe my grandfather has passed. I don't know. But I expect that he has. So really just setting the family up for failure. And with my mother's worsening schizophrenia, her isolating herself, her oddities, just a quick example. She would force me to eat beans with every meal until my grandmother interceded. And it's not a major trauma, but it was just an oddity. And later, my mother went to social services after having lived with both sets of aunts and uncles. She wanted her own place to live, and she knew that she couldn't afford it. And really the only option was government housing. But one of the key reasons she wanted to live independently was because of my Uncle John's interference. And he would interfere by listening to my less stellar aunt, the pot smoking aunt, white trash, yes. My mother had beaten me, and my aunt took me into the bathroom and had me show her the bruises on my body. And so she went to the new patriarch, my Uncle John, and Uncle John had a talk with my mother. It's not okay to beat your children, and they had been beaten, but Uncle John tried to impress upon my mother that it's not something that you should be doing. Don't beat Adriene. And then when I'll share this story, my mother greeted me as I was coming home, third grade, so around 7, 8, 9, yeah, somewhere around there. I walked in the door. It was the end of my 3rd grade year, and I saw this mountain of marijuana. And they never tried to hide their drug use. They would smoke in front of us. There was so the uncle had a previous daughter from a relationship. My aunt and uncle, the white trash aunt and uncle, had a son together. And I remember being in the car, they would be smoking up front, getting high, and all the windows would be up. And the 3 of us would be sitting in the back row of the car. And it was
Getting high as a kite?
yes, it was completely
At 8
smoked
years
up.
old.
Yes.
At 8 years old.
We'd be sitting on the couch and they'd say, "Hey, pass the rolling tray." And that was the tray with the papers and the marijuana. And back then it had seeds, so they had to pick out the seeds. And coming home with this mountain of marijuana, my mother grabbed me by the hand and we left, and we just started walking down. It wasn't a major highway, but it was a road with significant traffic, and we walked until we came to a payphone. And then my mother called Uncle John and Aunt Rose and asked if they could pick us up and if we could live with them. And I would later hear that my white trash aunt and uncle had 3 pounds of marijuana sitting on their kitchen table. It was 3 pounds.
So they were dealing, I'm guessing. They weren't smoking though.
Yeah, they were dealers.
That's a hell of a lot of pot.
And there was never an attempt to hide it from us. But it did do some very good things for me. I saw how they lived. They were dirty. They were not clean. They had cockroaches. I would go to school and pull a notebook out of my backpack, and the cockroaches would scuttle across my desk. And the other kids, I know they saw it, but they never said anything to me. And I was yes, I was so ashamed. It was horrifying, but that's how they lived. And my mother was not so. She cleaned all the time. I helped clean. I got paid a quarter to clean my aunt and uncle's bathroom. And so I think my mother had finally drawn the line. And with 3 pounds of marijuana in the house, if police had come, then my mother could have potentially either gone to jail, but most certainly us children would have been taken into custody for that.
Taken out.
Say again?
You'd be taken out of the home.
Yes, Children's Protective Services would have intervened with that amount. So my mother went to Aunt Rose and Uncle John, and we didn't even pack any clothes. We left my white trash aunt and uncle. But the same thing happened. My mother beat me on a pretty regular basis. And one time it was with a dog leash. And my Aunt Rose, who's my aunt by marriage, she's not even blood. She, like my other aunt, she asked to see the bruises, and she went to Uncle John and said, her mother cannot keep doing this to her. You have got to put a stop to it. So again, Uncle John talks to my mother, which she sees as interfering in parenting her child. And she wants her own apartment, which we had tried living on our own. We had no furniture, none whatsoever. And she couldn't afford to pay the rent and have groceries. She was working a minimum wage job at a cafeteria style restaurant, which during that year, she would actually bring me up to the restaurant and we would sit and have a meal together. And it's one
That's
of
nice.
my rare positive memories that I have with my mother, that she would take me up and I would get my favorite order. And it's a tradition that I carry on with my daughter. So, but my mother didn't like the interference. She felt that she had a right to dictate her own terms. And she went to social services and said, what needs to happen for me to have my own apartment, a government subsidized apartment? And social services said, well, right now, you don't have as dire of a need as other families who are currently homeless. They take precedent over you. So my mother's solution was for us to become homeless. So we, Aunt Rose and Uncle John took us to a shelter. We got shuttled to the downtown Houston Salvation Army. And the summer after fourth grade, we were homeless. We lived in the shelter. And something that I don't understand to this day is the fact that every day after breakfast, the shelter would force all of the people living there to leave from 10 a.m. till 3 in the afternoon. And bear in mind, this is downtown Houston, skyscrapers, nothing to do. And my mother would lead the way. By this time, she had had my brother, a consequence of working at that cafeteria style restaurant. And we would walk the streets of downtown Houston, and you could see the heat waves emanating from the asphalt, just billowing up. And we walked and walked. We had nowhere to go. You couldn't sit down. The benches, of course, being made of metal. Not sure what genius made that decision. You couldn't sit down. We had no money for food or beverages. And on a few occasions, people would actually walk up to us and give us water, give us food. There was one time where a man walked up and gave us a pepperoni pizza in a box. He gave us a pizza. And so we're standing there on the sidewalk eating this pizza that we were given. And so once we were allowed back in the shelter at 3 in the afternoon, we would lay down for a nap. My mother, brother, and I, we would push our twin beds together. So we slept in essentially the same bed, which I was used to. Back when my grandmother was alive, it was my grandmother, mother, and me in the middle. So it was hard, and I took the opportunity to read every single book that the homeless shelter, the Salvation Army shelter, had available. And from a very young age, school was my refuge. It was my escape. So I always got excellent grades. I was, a brown noser. I was always the teacher's pet. And
smart move.
Say again?
Smart move.
Well,
I mean, think about it. If that's your and all this devastation, I want to get to a few of these questions too, but all this devastation, you found refuse within education, within schooling, within bettering yourself, because it was and so that, if that wasn't the turn that you made, then the output, then there's baggage and stuff. I mean, what is 160, 170 miles an hour you're driving on roads at one time? Just taking those risks. 159. You never were able to get to 160. I remember that.
Yeah.
But that's an attempt at killing yourself without killing yourself. I mean, to some degree, it's got to be. So you that progression of that And I know the feeling. I first thought about it at 16 years old, and there's lots of story back there, but this isn't about me. But it is about. This is not an uncommon story, and the fact that you buried yourself or found that refuge in school and education and then connecting with teachers. You called it brown nosing, but being that little puppy dog that's sucking all that in. And we haven't even got to, and there's some comments on this down the way a little bit, but I mean, there's thousands of children that are just missing. I mean, there's the children coming across the border that we're missing, 30,000 kids or something. And then there's, every year there's people missing. And so when you said you didn't feel safe as a child, that's a real thing. Not just what you went through, but I mean, just innocent, just pure innocence by happenstance. Literally large numbers of children go missing. And why are they missing? They're either trafficked, trafficked, or they're killed, or they're being held, whatever. But go on with your story. But I just want to keep adding the colors in here, and let me just get to this. This is so inspiring. Thank you for your such raw truth, says David Darnell. I wanted to hit a couple of these. How did you, Adriene, find the strength to start your healing journey? Now finish what you're down the journey, because I wanted you to fill that in. But this is the one I want to, Clive. This is where I want to start some of these questions here, because they're powerful. I mean, I got 20 questions here. Now that you've got a really big fan here, the lady or the person earlier, whoever it was, got mad at me at trying to pronounce her name, so I'm not going to try it again. But I got rid of that comment. But there's a lot of discussion in what you're going through. So finish the journey, but also let's sprinkle in some of these questions if you don't mind.
Absolutely, I love it. I love it.
Whoa. 7,204. We just went over. I've been watching it, seeing if I was. We're at 7,000. You're at like the second highest now of all. Now we've only been doing this year, but this is my 375th or 6th. I don't remember which one episode, and this is the second highest, only missed by the one right before this. This second highest so far, and it's not over yet. I mean, we're not even an hour yet. I don't anticipate going 5 hours, but
No.
but I mean, my God, you're affecting.
I could.
And that's what this. Yeah, and we may. Who knows?
No.
The only restriction I have is that
there's a
the
book.
library. The library close. Oh yeah, we got to do. Yeah, the library closes at 6 o'clock, so I only got 3 hours left, and I got to be out of here. So,
Okay.
with that said, we got to talk about your book, and actually, why don't you finish your story? Let's answer Clive's, and then because we're almost at 8. We're at 7,780 right now,
Okay.
7,780, and I do want to get through your book because I know it's powerful, and I know it's a read that really a lot of people, I'm sure, will be ordering from this show, because I see the reactions. You could tell when people are just like, oh, this is inspiring. I love your story. Thank you very much for this. And they've had an effect. But I see some people that are really here because they need the help. They need this discussion, and thus the book. So let's go with where you are. You're at about 8-ish now, and the homeless part of your life, and that sounds really terrible, but it almost sounds like your life's getting a little better now. I mean, with 5 years old, I know. I'm being a little sarcastic.
My mother at the end. So that was the summer after 4th grade when.
Oh my God! All right, just 82-43 now. 82-43. Wow, we may hit 10. We may have 10. Go ahead.
So near the end of the summer, we're notified that there is an apartment for us, a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and we go live in Haverstock Hill apartment complex, which if you Google it and read the reviews today, you'll see things like there are only a few murders that happen. If you mind your business, just ignore the drug deals, you'll be fine.
They actually say that?
Yes. Yes. I hand
so
to
this
God.
is the good part.
Yes.
This is the side. This is to make it look good.
This is now they have a police office on site. Now they have gates. But when we were given the 2-bedroom apartment, my mother got what she wanted. She had total independence and freedom. My aunts and uncles basically abandoned us. I saw them 2 or 3 times over the course of the 2 years that I lived there, and we were abjectly poor. Poverty that very few people are able to fully understand. So of course we were on welfare and food stamps, and I'm not sure how many people know food stamps don't cover paper goods. So instead of toilet paper, we used wash rags. Instead of toothpaste, we used baking soda. There was a liquid detergent that we used for our hair, our body, our laundry, which we did in the bathtub and hung up to dry over the rail because we couldn't afford the laundromat. We had no access to a supermarket that didn't require a several-hour journey through Houston public transportation, which is virtually non-existent. So we subsisted from the food from the convenience store, and there was a very small mini mart. It didn't even have meat. So not that we could have afforded it to even begin with, but our total furnishings, we had an egg crate in the living room where we had our 12-inch black and white TV. There was a mattress in the second bedroom that my brother and I shared. My mother slept on the floor. But so when I say poor, I mean we were malnourished from lack of decent food. We made sacrifices that we had to, that there were no other choices. My mother had one dresser in her bedroom until Aunt Rose and Uncle John brought over a mattress for her to sleep on. Now, I don't want anyone to think that my mother was dirty. That could not be further from the truth. I associate the smell of bleach with my mother. Everything was bleached, and we couldn't afford a vacuum, so she swept the carpet. And she implored me, the 3 of us, my little brother had been born by that time. She told me very strictly, you go from the apartment to school and school to the apartment. And it's, as you mentioned earlier, bad things could have happened. And she taught me to keep my head down. Don't look at anyone, don't say anything, keep your mouth shut, go about your business. And I did, but it was abject poverty. And
people can't even imagine. Most people, I mean, I always talk about there's so much that this government, and this isn't a political discussion, although there's so many parts. I mean, our whole life, we can't operate without leaders making the decisions that they're doing, and we put them in place to do that for us. But at the end of the day, there's not an aspect of our life that doesn't get into that. But I mean, there's so many things, including you talk about abject poverty and the efficiency of the way our government any government does things. is wasteful at best, corrupt as well, and other things like that. And my belief, and I don't believe necessarily in redistribution of wealth, but why can't we? $16.7 trillion a year our government spends of our money, all of our collective taxes and so forth and so on. But at the end of the day, there's got to be $1 trillion or $2, $1 trillion or $2 that are wasted to the point where there should be nobody ever, no matter what the worst situation is. And it's got to be done intelligently, but nobody should ever be in the poverty line. I mean, my God, the Louisiana average, which is below the poverty line in Louisiana, is like $42,000 a year for a family of four or so, whatever, which is very difficult to live on. Different places have different cost of living things, but House of Representatives, their average, this what your budget is for furnishing your office is $47,000. I mean, there's ridiculousness. Wow. Yeah. I mean, just that simple dichotomy just it blows your mind. And so this is another subject for another day, obviously, because we could spend forever on it. As part of my book, which I haven't put a book out yet. I started querying a book, and then they love my writing. It's a memoir, so it's a nonfiction, so it's a book summary that I'm querying. And it's 13 chapters. I won't go through it all. But the reason I bring that up is because I started doing this a year ago because I was getting agents saying, hey, you got to have some sort of platform. You got to be able to at least prove you can. They're a business, right? So you got to prove you can sell yourself. And so I said, okay, let's go out there and do that. Maybe get a couple thousand subscribers, have some fun, really dig some things out. I'm a curious person, but now that the thing's sitting on the shelf collecting dust as I want to get back to it. But in there, I talk about corruption and greed in the political arena, which really suck regulation on and on and on. We're the encumbered class, and people that have any kind of scenario that's just under cooperative in building on the ladder, being able to generate an income. You have situations like what you went through, and that's a whole area that just by happenstance. I don't want to make that sound bad. I hope that doesn't come out. But you have no ability to get out and dig out from that. It's much harder than it should be, because that should not be as difficult of a journey. In my opinion, it is. It's fact. It's been that way forever, but it shouldn't be. That's another story. I can get back to what you were saying, but it devastates me when I hear these kind of stories, because you think realistically that should never be the case. You should be dealing with what you're dealing with, but piled on to that, trying to make decisions on whether to go homeless so you can afford to get an apartment, or struggle and choose whether you're going to eat food or you're going to buy toilet paper that month. Yeah. Whatever, or to keep the lights on.
So my mother was very clean, extremely clean, and I never, ever saw her smoke a cigarette, take a drink, do any drugs. Yeah. She didn't. What the situation was, without having a profession or a vocation, she could only earn minimum wage, and minimum wage did not. I asked her, I specifically asked my mother, why don't you try to get a job? And she explained to me that what she would earn at the job would just go to pay for daycare for my younger brother. He was 2 or 3 at the time. So there was no way for her to elevate herself. But she did not drink. She did not do drugs. Opponents of social welfare like to say, oh, they're in this situation of their own accord, from their own shortcomings. And it was so clean in our apartment. I believe another neighbor had mice or rats. And one morning I woke up with a bite mark on my hand.
Oh,
And what I suspect is that a mouse or a rat bit me because there was no other food in our house. My mother kept everything in the, like the flour, the cornmeal, or potatoes, whatever. She kept everything in the fridge. So, and I have the
right.
scar to this day. So now, also bear in mind that my mother was spiraling. She was saying things like, David Bowie was my brother's father, Mick Jagger was her father, as well as my father. And she would spend just hours in the bathtub and just hours in her room. As I mentioned, eventually she got a mattress. Before that, she was just sleeping on the floor. So my brother and I could have the mattress. And life was dire. And I would, there was a lamppost outside my window, and I would read books by the lamplight and by the moon. And I would turn in a book every day. If it was longer, every other day I would get a new book. So fifth grade, that was that. Sixth grade, middle school, bus stop, instead of the school being next door, the bus stop was at the convenience store. And that's where I met a girl, and she came from a different world. She had an upper middle class family, upper middle class life. But we became very close friends, and I started telling her about my mother. The beatings continued, and in fact, they probably worsened because she no longer had my Uncle John or my Aunt Rose to answer to. So I started to confide in this girl, Sarah Smith, and I had never done that before. I had never taken anything outside of the family before. And Sarah convinced me to go to the counselor's office and let them know what was going on. My mother had started writing a felon, a man in San Francisco prison for raping and murdering several women. My mother had seen him on a program and reached out to him and corresponded and wanted to take my brother and me to San Francisco so she could be closer with him. And I had spent the night over at, or I had spent weekends over at Sarah's house. And she basically convinced me to go to the counselor and say, look, you know, my mother's routinely beaten me, and she's going to try to take us to San Francisco, which, although my family didn't intervene, we didn't see them often, at least they were there. We were in the same city, and I knew that moving to San Francisco was going to be awful because whatever tiny safety net that my family provided would be gone. And the counselor calls social worker. The social worker comes to our apartment, and I've gone through our furniture. She writes that there's food in the house, that it was just a mother-daughter dispute. And I would find out decades later that there was an incident when I was in first grade where a teacher reported to Children's Protective Services that I had a mark on my left cheek from where my mother had backhanded me so hard that it left a mark that stayed throughout the day. So this caseworker comes. She obviously doesn't look for any prior records. If she had, she'd realize this wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't a mother-daughter thing. And the next week at school was the last week. So I was becoming frantic. And my last day of school, got off the bus, went to the payphone, called my aunt, the trashy one, begging her to come help because my mother had already taken me to the Greyhound bus station and I had refused to get on the bus. So that weekend, that Friday, she took me into the closet. And do you know the wooden dowel rod that you hang your clothes on?
Yes.
That's what I was beaten with. And she had me in the closet so that the neighbors couldn't hear me scream. And at the end of the beating, she told me that, and I remember her words verbatim, if you get your brother taken away from me, I will kill you. And I looked at her, I was on the floor. She had beaten me standing over me with the rod, basically a baseball bat. I would have bruises up and down my arm from covering my head as I was on the floor. She said, I will kill you. And I asked her, I said, would you really kill your own daughter? And she looked at me and said, well, if I pounded your head into the concrete over and over and you died, it wouldn't be my fault. And that's what she left me with. And I knew that she was deadly serious. So this time we go to the Greyhound bus station. I get on the bus. I end up in San Francisco, run away from the bus station. The homeless shelter we were supposed to stay at in San Francisco, they happened to be closed for remodeling. They were getting new carpet. So we're sleeping on the bus benches in the San Francisco Greyhound bus station. And around 3 a.m, I go upstairs to the payphone. I call my best Sarah Smith's family. Mr. Smith answers the phone. He tells me to get out of there. So I do. I start running down the street. A car pulls up beside me and a man asks at 3 a.m, are you okay? Do you need help? So I get in the car with him and I'm telling him what's happened and what's going on and why I need to get away. And he puts his right hand on my left thigh. And at the next stoplight, I get out of the car. I don't tell him anything. I just get out. And it happened to be across the street from a nice hotel. And I went in, I found the pay phones. I called Mr. Smith again. He tells me to hide in the bathroom. And so I'm hiding on top of the toilet because I'm so scared that my mother will find me. I didn't want her to be able to see my feet underneath the bathroom stall. Like that's how scared I was. And so Mr. Smith flies out and flies me back to Houston with him. And the police, they're going through their routine through the bus station the next morning, and my mother reports me gone. And they realize that my mother has no place to stay. They take my brother into custody. And by the end of the week, he was returned to Houston as well. And it didn't happen immediately, but we did go and stay with the Smith family. They ended up keeping my brother. He was younger. It was easier for him to learn to adapt to their lifestyle. He was 4, severely developmentally delayed. At 4, he had a vocabulary of 10 words, and they end up kicking me out. I'm 13 years old. I've been through all of this trauma, all of the beatings, the perceived abandonment by my grandmother when she passed. And I go live with Aunt Rose and Uncle John, and I'm just mentally not able to function. And so I asked to be put in foster care to leave. And that was the biggest regret of my childhood. I'll put it this way. My schizophrenic, physically abusive mother, I've never had a nightmare about her. But the foster mother that I went and lived with for 3 years, and it wasn't physical or sexual abuse, it was strictly emotional abuse. But I've had nightmares about that woman whom I refuse to give her a name. Her name is the Witch from Hell with the B, TBFH. And in my book, Unbroken, that's what I call her, TBFH, the Witch from Hell. And the abuse that I suffered from her was equal to, if not greater than what I went through with my mother. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds, but a couple of comments that she made to me one time trying on a swimsuit. She said, "Your thighs are fat. I'm surprised you haven't started throwing up so you can lose weight." And that started a battle of bulimia that continues to this day. I'm still battling it. And when I went to the psychiatrist and they prescribed medication, I went back to her house. I took my razor apart and cut my wrists at 15 years old. And she looked at it and said, "You didn't even do it the right way. You're supposed to cut along the vein, not across it." And this woman, the foster girls had separate silverware, separate dishes, separate food. We were not allowed to eat at the table with them. We weren't allowed to sit on the furniture. We had to sit on the floor like animals. And she had an alarm outside our bedroom door. We were locked in at night. And her abuse is, I still struggle with self-worth and valuing myself. It's like the progress that I made, it was a quote unquote therapeutic foster home. I had a therapist who came out every other week. And my issues were depression, anxiety, and OCD. I used education to escape what my life was like. And they viewed that as obsessive compulsive. And so I discussed my items, but at the same time, with the abuse that I was enduring from the bitch from hell, I left an incredibly damaged person. And what got me out was a congressional scholarship to do a 1-year foreign exchange to Germany. So
How the Germany connection goes.
yes.
So as phenomenal, I mean, just amazing that you're still here. You know, I mean that you survived and still have residue. I mean, you talked about bulimia. That's a very dangerous disorder because you lose a lot. I mean, you're not just throwing up; you're throwing up enzymes. There's all sorts of things that happen with your female and the imbalance that your body goes through. Although that's not the driving force. It is the medical factual results. So you're doing so much to yourself, and I assume when you were cutting yourself, it was just so you could heal, not necessarily to kill yourself. So
That'd be wrong.
But what? Oh, you were trying to kill yourself at that time. So, but just even the fact of that woman having that conversation with you instead of wanting to reach out for help is just another example in a long list. And it lands perfectly on Clyde's question here. How did you get the strength? What caused and were able to give you the strength to start back on a healing journey, which obviously is still going on? I saw the emotion when talking about the bitch from hell, because you're not there yet, and you know that remorse and remorse being one thing, but that the hurt, the pain, and those things are still in us. It's not like you get affected and then you begin a journey of healing. That's a great scenario, but the reality of things are you're a grown woman in your own family and living a life that you certainly never saw before,
Yeah.
but you could hear the pain inside you and trying to hold back. I just was on a show the other day where I was talking about a subject in the same arena, and saying about me, but I had to hold off. Sometimes I keep this water here just so I can wash everything down so my nose doesn't start hurting and the tear starts coming out. I'm very familiar with the fact of still having that pain inside you. But as Clive's asking here, what brought you to a point where you began that healing journey? Obviously, he's referring to the book, which is part of that journey.
So my host family in Germany was nothing short of amazing. It was a mother, father, and their 5-year-old daughter. And coming from the foster home, which I'd like to point out that the foster parent, the foster mother, she was not an employee of the state of Texas. Children's Protective Services contracted out with a for-profit company that offered therapeutic foster care. So, and there was a perverse incentive. The higher the needs of the fostered girl, the higher the pay. So it was a perverse incentive. The more damaged I was, the more money she got. And I didn't even touch on the fact that we were slaves to her, and I don't use that word lightly. And the shame that the last foster girl had to clean the tub with Comet before the foster family would use the bathtub. So, but she reported to this for-profit company. So
that's bad. That's bad.
Yes,
that's bad.
Exactly. And so not only was there CPS they are understaffed, under-resourced. The social workers, I consider them saints, trying to deal with 25, 30 kids at a time. The foster parents, and there are some good ones, but many of them view it as an occupation, as a way to make
Correct.
money.
Correct.
And I wish it wasn't so, but at least incentivize so that the more you help the child, the more pay you get versus the more they're damaged. So there was this lack of oversight for this for-profit company. And then pair that with the fact that my caseworker had 29 other girls that she was trying to attend to. And a logical question is, why, Adrienne, why didn't you tell someone, and why didn't you leave? Why didn't you go somewhere else? And the answers are, who was I supposed to tell? If I told, it would go immediately to the bitch from hell. There's no separation. And why didn't I go anywhere else? There was nowhere else to go except a girls' shelter. And I had already been homeless. I already knew what it was like to live in a shelter. So those options weren't there for me. So when I got an application to apply for the congressional scholarship to do a 1-year foreign exchange to Germany, I jumped on it. And it went through many tiers. My psychiatrist had to sign off on it. My caseworker, the TBFH had to sign off on it. Even a judge had to sign off because I was a ward of the state of Texas. So I go to this host family, and it's just night and day. Now, my Sarah Smith's family, I didn't know how to act or behave when I was there. That's why I got the nickname of Ice Queen, because I had never been in that environment. You have to imagine, I'm coming from such poverty that the best restaurant I had ever been to was a cafeteria style restaurant. The first time a waiter came to take my order, I just froze. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And they took my standoffishness, which I didn't know how to behave. In school, I knew the rules, I knew the environment, I knew how to excel. And nothing in my life prepared me to live with my best friend's family. They had a guest room, which to me, who I had shared a mattress with family my entire life, a mattress, a bed with, I had never slept alone. To going to a home that had a room that was available just in case somebody wanted to spend the night, that just blew my mind. The idea of a guest room, just in case. So I had kind of learned
that room was kind of like what would be a house in your world back then. I mean, it was like
absolutely. And their three children each had their own rooms. They had Lexus cars in the garage. They were very upper middle class. And when they kicked me out, I felt like I didn't deserve their lifestyle. And despite the fact that I tried to earn it, they still let me go. So I go to this amazing host family, and they treat me with respect and dignity, and as a competent, in Germany at 16, you're an adult. So I was attending gymnasium, which is a high school that's geared for students who intend to go on to university. I learned the language. It changed my life. It was amazing, and really gave me the opportunity to learn how a healthy family functioned, and to start healing myself, to start gathering just grains, the grains of sand, just the grains of self-worth, to begin to have some semblance of self-esteem. So I am forever grateful to them. I send my host mom flowers every Christmas, and we are still in touch. I've had my book, Unbroken: Life Outside the Lines. I've had it translated into German. But bear in mind, I didn't tell my host family all of my past. I didn't want them to see me like that. I didn't want pity. It was a fresh start for me. And that is really when I started to heal. So that was the beginning of my healing journey. Now
I've got a couple of questions on that exact question, and I've also got a number of them that go back to what we were talking about early on. So I'm going to skip over a few. I do want to bring this up because, I mean, just this comment, just a straight comment. What compels people to do such damage to a child? I don't get it. It's purely sick. But what I want you to address is Branson here, who's a fairly regular. We've already talked about this a little bit. We'll come back to that. But you were just talking about the book. Let's spend a little time on the book. We're an hour and a half in. We might as well talk about your book a little bit. Why not? And did you, anytime now when you get a second, give me your contact information, because I've still got this one lady is a big fan. She's 64 years old, and she's led a pretty devastating life as well. But she's probably commented another 15 times on here. And but I want to get to your book, and let's hover on this for a minute and talk a little bit about your book, a little bit more, basically what we've been talking about for the first hour-ish, 50 minutes-ish, whatever, is what's within the book. And basically this is what, obviously much more written, much more detailed. We're just talking surface in this this point here. But let's spend a little bit of time on the book in meaning, where is it? Where can you find it? Give me your contact information in there as well. And did writing the book help heal emotionally? If you're anything like me, that's why I have a book sitting out there, because I have tens of thousands of poems, because that's a healing process for me. I'm guessing some sort of healing also came. The pivot point was in Germany, and you mentioned that to me a number of times, even referring back to the Autobahn, which is back to what I was saying earlier. But so that's kind of a pivot point or a turning point for you. And then the book obviously takes that, and you start laying it out, and it's almost like you're exercising some demons out through the pen and paper, or the typewriter, whatever. But right, I mean, that's where we are. Chris had a great, in my opinion, great question.
I agree. Writing the book, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, it was hell. It was pure hell, because I am expert level at repressing my memories, repressing my emotions, and compartmentalizing all of my traumas. I say they go in a metaphorical box that goes on a metaphorical shelf behind a metaphorical door. And writing the book, it actually came from a little background. At 20 years old, I reached out to Children's Protective Services, and I said, I want my case file. And they sent me this massive box, and in it were these 2 huge stacks of papers. And basically it was every document that was ever written about me. So psychiatric evaluations, therapist reports, monthly foster care reports, and all of that is available on my website, unbrokencaldwell.com. And the book is available for pre-order now. But anyone who'd like to reach me directly, my handles on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, it's Unbroken Caldwell, just like my website. But the book, it was beyond difficult, but also incredibly cathartic.
It was beyond difficult because of the fact that you said you're very good at what I call compartmentalizing, where you're just shoving things in boxes. For me, that all the boxes blew out about a year ago, last May, and that's what kind of started my journey back into this way, being much more authentic and going through the healing process. Still not healed. This is a journey, not a journey. Life is not a straight line. But I want to spend, and I want to get into the Noni because I'm seeing a whole story we can do right at the end here with her. So I'm not ignoring your questions. I'm skipping over a number of things because sprinkled in here is some other very good information. She's given feedback. Obviously, she's lived she or he, I'm assuming, lived a very similar life. So I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff, and then at the end, as we're wrapping up, I'll go through these, and you may want to pick something to respond back to, because it's basically, she's talking about, you can't blame yourself. You're the child, and this is what all the things that kids do. They blame themselves.
Absolutely.
What am I doing wrong for them to treat me like that? It's got to be something I'm doing. So we'll get through all that.
I was my mother would beat me. She would always send me to shower afterwards. And by 5th grade, I was praying to God, asking why my mother was crazy. Why did I have a crazy mother? I was so grateful for not having a father. I didn't understand how kids with 2 parents managed, because to the idea that another parent might be in my life, I was like, oh dear God, thank you for only giving me one. And I had, by 5th grade, started fantasizing about hurting my mother. So, and I graduated high school. I did go on to college, but I don't know how many suicide attempts I've had. Some of them occurred during when I was in a blackout, when I was in a drunken blackout. I woke up one morning in a hospital bed, and Aunt Rose was in the doorway, and I said, "What happened?" And she said, "You took a bottle of pills." And I swore that I didn't. I said, "No, I didn't." And I didn't even believe the toxicology report. It wasn't until I got in my car and I saw the residue of the pills, because your body will fight to save itself. It'll regurgitate it if you take a bottle of pills in your stomach all at once. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I wanted to die so badly. I was so hurt, so damaged, that even in a drunken blackout state, I still attempted to kill myself. That's how damaged I was.
That's
So,
crazy. So let me ask you this. So let's look at Clayton here.
yes.
He's a regular attender on the show. I recognize him, and he's very, very intelligent young man. Everybody's young to me, so I'm going to call people a young man. I don't know how old he is, but Clayton here. What advice would you give? Would Adriene give?
Yes.
To others that are still in pain? Love this question.
It's phenomenal. First, your situation is not permanent. If it's a younger person, where they
Say
have
that again. Wait. Say that again, because I want to have them say that again. What you're saying right now is huge, because I guarantee you there are times, the only thing that I didn't go through with it for is because I was afraid I'd miss something, or what if something changed. But I at that point you're battling. There's nowhere to go. I mean, this is it. I've got to get myself out of this, and here's the only way. So what you just said.
Your situation is not permanent. If you're currently a younger person with people of authority in your life and you are going through trauma, just recognize that within a few short years, you will be old enough to make your own decisions, and you will be able to take charge of your life and embrace that opportunity, because the decisions that you make at that point, they're going to dictate whether or not you continue living a life of trauma and struggle. If you self-medicate, if you drink, if you do drugs, if you're self-medicating, numbing the pain, you're also essentially guaranteeing that your trauma is going to continue.
Well, and on top of that, all you're doing is you're numbing the pain. I get it. Been there, done it.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon. But at that point, you're also not moving forward at all, because you're numbing the pain, and you're here while the life keeps moving forward. So now you're actually making it worse.
Exactly. Right? I say the decisions you make today impact the life you have tomorrow.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So make those good decisions as soon as you're in the position to, whether that means joining the military or go into vocational school. I don't, pivot, right? Yeah, take steps to get yourself a profession, a vocation. Doesn't mean you have to go to college. That's not for everyone, but just recognize your own authority and recognize your role in the life that you are building for yourself. Recognize your power. And
there's so many things to dig into here, because before you can even do any of that, you have to get to a point where you get it. But when you were in the middle of it, you didn't get it. There's no way you got it. Otherwise, you would have been Unbroken, which, by the way, somebody wants to know how you came, what inspired that name. We'll get to that in a second. But, the journey for you and for me and for other people that are still here and down the journey road, because like this is life, right? It's not this, nor should it be. But, it's a journey. So
Absolutely.
for you to recognize that is the critical thing. What the advice that you're giving now, and I'd like you to reemphasize that, can only come from people like you. And then somebody hears it and they go, oh, wait a minute. Okay. So I need to start really thinking. So I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the middle of the heat and the battle, and I'm drinking, I'm doing this and that. And then fortunately somebody reads your book. Somebody hears you today and then says they want to know more. By the way, when you get a chance, put in I know you said it out loud, the website and the book site, and, the contacting you, but please in the next little bit, while, as a matter of fact, I see you're getting ready to do it. So I'll keep talking if that'll save you some time. Here, I'll take you off. I'm going to steal the stage. All right. So I'm just screwing around now. I mean, God, we still got we're at an hour and 40 minutes and we're still well into the 7,000 people here listening. So I'm going to get a little of my spotlight. See the spotlight, see the shine. Where it's awesome to have this conversation with people, because I always talk about, that we as the middle class don't have the access to as much information as the elites in this country do. And that's not a boohoo, let's redistribute. Looks like she's put it back in. But what it is more people, more finances to have access to stuff, and to have an expert like what she's talking about here. This is somebody living through and lived through and still in recovery, but helping others recover. The most absolutely worst possible, as far as I can't think of anything worse, first 13 years of your life or 16 years of your life, until the German family, or when you went to Germany. That was a pivot for you. And God reached out for no other reason, lended a hand. Now I'm starting to get broke up here a little bit. I can feel my nose tingling. So I'm gonna let you go on. What's the biggest lesson that you learned through your journey? And you're still learning. Your journey's not over. But I Clive's question here, Clive Root. Looks like he's a podcaster. I see a microphone in a set here. What is the biggest lesson you learned so far in your journey? And I'm sure there's more. You're a young lady still, so you got a lot of journey ahead of you. Thank God.
That I am here for a purpose. My final suicide attempt, I put a gun to my head and I pulled the trigger twice.
Wow. You pulled the trigger twice?
Yes.
Click. Oh
yes.
My God. Okay, that's a hold on. You're not done with your journey moment.
Correct. That was after college. I struggled greatly. I was doing the drinking. I had done drugs. I sobered up from the drugs, replaced it with drinking. And my greatest my biggest lesson was that I'm here for a purpose. And unfortunately that didn't come with a memo saying go do XYZ. But
Good
I
point
know
you're making
that
there. It doesn't come with a memo. You're right. And here's the thing. Sometimes we got to go through this. I like to say this. If God hasn't fixed, and I don't know how spiritual you are or any of that. I'm not a Bible thumper or anything, but I've learned a lot. If God hasn't fixed the situation in your life, then more than likely he's fixing you through the situation. But no, that's not necessarily this example, because you went through and have gone through and still live with, and probably still live within the most treacherous. I can't think of anything worse, to be honest with you. But you're still going through this. But people don't necessarily. I'm on my journey. right? You're on your journey.
Yes.
It took us the years that it took us and the experiences to get to a point where you find it. And you feel it when you're on your journey now.
Yes.
You feel different now. I know I do. You feel, right? You just said it. You feel different. Can I ask this question? You haven't done ask this for the last 15 minutes. Yes, I'm curious too. So Daniel asks, what inspired you, Adriene, to title her book? Title your book Unbroken. When does it come out? You said pre-order. When does it come out?
So
We're not done yet. I'm not wrapping up.
Okay. I expect it to be in early February. So I thought I was done with the manuscript. I added another 10,000 words, and it has to go through copy edit and. So looking at early February. So Unbroken.
That was a good try there. You were trying to save me because I was off and I was a little late in doing that. Go ahead. How did you do that? How did you come to Unbroken? Sorry.
Yeah. If you look Unbroken up in the dictionary, there are actually two meanings. So not damaged, not in pieces, not in tatters. But the other way of interpreting Unbroken is not tamed, not subdued, not fit for service or duty. And I think of a horse. If you have a wild horse, before you can ride it, you have to break its spirit. It has to be broken in. So for me, Unbroken, I fit both of those categories. My spirit has not been subdued. I am not. There's an Asian technique. I think it might be Japanese. I'm not sure, but they take broken pottery and they repair it with gold. And the final piece, once it's reconstructed, is actually more precious, more valuable because of the gold and the repair. So Unbroken, I really liked both ways that the word can mean. So how do I handle moments when my old pain resurfaces?
Thank you. Yeah, there's a number of these type of questions coming up. So that's why I wanted to bring that in.
Very, very legitimate question. I have to take very good care of myself. And I always say you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can be in a position to help anyone else. So whenever I'm reliving these things, sometimes I have to physically step away. I have to do something physical, go for a walk, go work out, just anything to get myself in a better place mentally. Another easy thing that I do, I'm very impacted by music, and I make a conscious choice about what I listen to. I don't listen to negative. I am a product of the 90s alternative and grunge. I love it, but I have to be careful what I listen to because it can bring me down. It can take me to dark places, and I don't want to do that. So I use music to kind of lift myself back up out of those negative places. So
let's build on that a little bit. What's her name? Leah. Oh, Leah Famla. Okay, so she's a very interesting person, a contributor periodically. I recognize that name. How can you not remember Film Law?
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I love her question here. So, what would you say to someone who feels too broken to heal, which is another very valid, because if you're in the middle of it, what's the old saying? Can't see the forest through the trees, something like that. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. I can see where you can feel, and I've been there, and you've been there. Right?
Oh yeah.
What do you say to somebody who's there right now? They're there.
Sure. My pain was so overwhelming. My anger was so overwhelming. Instead of turning it outwards against the world, I would turn it inwards against myself. So I absolutely understand. And when you feel too broken, I would recommend that you remind yourself that you are in charge of yourself, that you can make the decision to view something, the old half glass empty, half glass full. If you can get yourself to start thinking about what you do have, one thing you'll never ever hear me say is that it can't get any worse. Those words will never come out of my lips because it can always get worse. Throughout my life, I would say it can't get any worse, and by God, it did. So to just acknowledge the power that you do have, which is how you frame your mindset, what mentality you're going to bring to your problems and your situations, that it starts with how you think, and that's something that you can control. It doesn't have anything to do with your outside environment, and it's not easy. It is not easy. And I'm not saying to pretend that the hurt isn't there, that the pain isn't there, that the trauma isn't there. It is. But you have to embrace your own power. You have to embrace yourself. And it starts by loving yourself.
Well, and what's interesting what you're saying there, and correct me if I'm wrong or add to it, but when you say you have to embrace your own power, I also believe, and producer Barbie is been one thing, you have had people in your life, and that's a core critical issue. You've got to have something or somebody that gives you reality back, somebody who cares about you, not somebody that just says, how you doing? And then just never really listens, but how are you doing? And then wait for the real answer, right? That's the kind of person you need as you're going along. But my point being is, she brought up to me, I've gone through periods that have been really rough. And one of the first things is you've got to realize that what you're thinking, what you're and you can't fake it, obviously, but what you can be is responsible and mature, let's say. I don't know if these are the right words, but and the reason I say that is because when you're thinking yourself about what you are and your circumstances, and that it'll never get better, or it'll never get worse, it can't get worse, which is also a negative concept. But at the end of the day, have you ever heard that term? But the vibe you throw out into the world is what you're attracting back to you. So you really have to be responsible. I saw a reaction there. I'm going to shut up. Go ahead and comment to that. And then I want to go through our friend here. She's got like 30 comments and different things. I want you to do some reaction to that. Okay. Go ahead. I saw you react, please.
The
vibe you're sending out,
yes,
is what you're actually attracting back to your life. Is that true or not? I mean,
it's incredibly true. It's incredibly true. And not everybody has a person in their life that they can share with or that they can go to. So when you are feeling completely powerless, you have to stop and acknowledge the power that you hold within yourself, that your thoughts, your mentality is going to shape how you view your circumstance, and you are in charge of that. That's what you can control. I'm assuming a lot of people have very little control or minimal control over these situations, more specifically teenagers, people along
And
those
they're the ones
lines.
that blame themselves. The children are the ones that will instantly blame themselves. We kind of hit on this earlier, but that's the worst part about this whole thing, because if something traumatic happens to you when you're an adult, you had a normal, whatever the words are, you had an unrestricted and a fruitful and a supportive growing up, and there was no real damage that came out of that, because that's where most of the mental, in my opinion, I'm no doctor. I haven't even written a book about this, but my thought is that the most difficult life will come from, if you're damaged when you're older, some of these things happen, and yes, it's devastating. I'm talking to a lady who, her husband 4 years ago died in a fire, and she's just her and her teenage kid, and she's been struggling with this forever, and that's a tough thing. But when you have these kind of, and I'm kind of not really even getting sexually abused or any of that, when you're adult, at least you have something better, more stage, more runway to be able to manage those thoughts.
Mhm.
As a kid, now it's ingrained. It's part of your DNA, literally, at that point. And it's people like you that they need to be able to draw from. Like you said, if you don't have somebody, go out and find help. Find a professional. Find a book, Unbroken. Find Adriene. Hell, you got your information here on the stuff. So you've got, like you said, you can manage you, but sometimes you need some help to find where it is to get on the road to manage you, because you could just keep going around without having any idea, because you were never raised with those tools, right?
Correct.
So let's come back here and let's have a little fun with our new best friend, and I'm not even going to try and beeswax.
None of your beeswax. None of your beeswax.
Yeah. Oh,
none of your business.
Oh, you know what? Damn it! I deleted that comment. I thought she was upset at me, and she actually just explained what her name was, because I didn't get that at all. Oh my God, do I feel silly? But that happens. What compels people to do now? Some of these are going back a little bit, because I've been, so we're going back, and just I want you to hear these. Make a little comment. I don't get it, and it's pure sick minds. That's just and then she talks about your gut instincts. Remember, we were talking about the brains and the spidey sense. But there were a couple in here I really wanted to get to. I suffered with gut issues most of our life, so none of your beeswax is a storyline that I think is very symmetrical. Yes, sir. Much damage. You are right. I've been sharing to help others heal. So here it is. I mean, you've inspired. Not that he or she hasn't already done this, but at the end of the day, having the ability to touch people's hearts so that they want to then go ahead and touch other people's hearts is amazing. This person is 64 years old, and with a whole trafficking thing. Yeah, and this was we touched on earlier. Remember the trafficking of sex trafficking?
I was very nearly trafficked.
Okay, so you take with this for a minute. Go with this. And talked about your situation, because I think it's just now finally, maybe even with this recent, I don't know what your politics are, but this recent administration they're really pushing to get a lot of the children that, and they found 20 kids day before yesterday in a illegal aliens place in Chicago. That's where I'm from, or that's where I moved from. And 20 kids were in there that were being sex trafficked. That's not said that right, but here, dive into this, would you?
Sure.
And your story.
I visited while I was in college, I went to visit my host family and friends. We went to a nearby city. I went with a
This
couple
was
of
in
guy
Germany.
friends in Germany,
Yeah, gotcha.
and we were at a bar. And I walked up to the bartender. My friends stayed at the table. I ordered just one beer, one for me. And I went back to the table, and after I don't remember what happened, but my friends say that I fell. We were sitting on picnic style benches and tables. I fell backward and was gone. So, what I believe, what I know, because it was like my second beer of the evening, was that Hamburg, being a major port city in Germany, the bartender actually drugged my drink, my beer, thinking that I was alone. And because I was there with friends, I did not get trafficked. Hamburg is known as a place where women are taken. So my friends said that, like, I got sick in the taxi and I ended up spending the night on the bathroom floor. But it very, very nearly happened to me. So, oh, Nunya Beeswax, my advice: forgive yourself for any guilt that little young child carries. It was never your fault. You were the child. The monsters who hurt you were very, very ill in their morals and values. Thank you, Nunya Beeswax. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I referenced this earlier. So true, isn't it?
And there are there are parts of me that still feel guilt, shame, survivor's guilt, going back to my little friend Jane. What if I had stayed? Could I have done something to protect her? Being grateful that it didn't happen to me and feeling shame about that gratitude. So, yeah. And again, generational abuse of all kinds took place way back when.
Still does.
Schizophrenia runs in my family. It was my grandfather, my mother. I have a cousin with it. And my daughter, she is 20 years old. And I've been watching closely from around the age of 17 to ensure that if it develops in her, that she receives the help that she needs, which a decade.
Like 20, 25, right?
My daughter's 20. I'm sorry.
No, but what I'm saying is most of the you said earlier, and I recognize that the symptoms of schizophrenia does not show up until later in life,
Late
17
teens,
maybe ish, but 20, 25, 35 is really a prominent time when it really starts to show itself. Isn't that true? Somewhere in there?
My experience, my mother's schizophrenia got worse, and with the passing of my grandmother, that really unleashed hell. So,
oh, no doubt about it. Just in continuing in the same vein, I told you she's got a lot of comments and questions here. Okay. Well, we'll skip some of them. Some of them are about the show. And sorry about your name screw up there. I totally missed that. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And you just read it right out loud, and I'm like, oh my God. Okay, that's what it is. We as abused children become hyper vigilant. Yes. We are always observing others, and I know this. Foster care, girls' home, abusive marriages, battered women's shelters, and all the abuse of trying to trust anyone to help you. This was your life. It still is, because it's part of you. But I mean, she's calling out exactly the way it is, isn't she?
Yes, she is. I now have an amazing life. Like I say that if you had shown my life to the 15-year-old Adriene, the 15-year-old Adriene would have called you a liar. I would not have believed that it would be possible for me to have the life that I do today. And I am incredibly grateful. And it I I wrote my book ultimately to help people, and my barometer of success, if I can change, and I mean truly profoundly deeply change one person's life, then I will consider it a success. That's what I
the
want
journey.
out of it.
That's the journey you're on. I mean, that's the mission that we're all talking about. And like I said, there's so many people uh, that never really find that journey. I mean, I built a machinery business up over 30 years, and just when we're getting to the next level, I'm like, I really don't want to do. I mean, people talk about being miserable in their job. This is a way lesser deal. I'm not trying to do this, but finding your journey, there's so much. Your journey was forced upon you, but finding that journey is something that's really special, and being able to affect other people's lives, especially with what your subject matter is here, because at that point you're at your weakest, most vulnerable. You don't have a basis, you don't have a grounding, you don't have a voice, you don't have any confidence, and you're just lost in the world. And really, suicide doesn't sound like such a bad deal, because why the hell am I still here? Why another day of this? I mean, and you don't see any way out until they meet somebody like you. And none of my beeswax says, I bid everyone peace in your heart and mind. When is healing? Who is healing today? She's saying, who's healing today? I don't know who this person is. She's never, he or she is, I'm assuming it's a woman from some of the things this person has said, but helping others has helped me heal. So this is it right here. This is the journey. I'm not mad. I laugh at it. None you be. Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, okay. So we don't. Yeah, she was celebrating. Well, we're still in the. Let's see. We're at over 2 hours, and we're over 4,000 people still here. I don't know. Seems big. I need to know that others are healing from the abuse that others perpetrated upon the youth becoming grandparents and parents today. Here's that generational thing.
Yeah.
There's a connection there. Anyway, did you want to comment on that? We've gone over some of this, and it's just really good to refresh that because this subject is so much. Any comments you want to make on anything so far? You already have, but I don't want to skip past something you want to jump on. So I'm going to keep going. I need to know that others are healing from the abuse that others perpetrated upon the youth and becoming grandparents today. That's that generational that we were talking about. At 64, I cry the hurt out now. Allow the pain to come. And we know this. I mean, we've both done it on this very show right now. And a little bit of the pain kind of bubbled up, right?
Yes.
And
Yes,
pick yourself up and be better for yourself and be there for others.
Yes.
Right?
So, yeah.
You getting tired?
No. But she's making fantastic points. Yes, I feel like I am in a place now where I need to help other people. I need for people, and my book is really not for teenagers. It should not be read by teenagers.
You said that. Yeah.
I would strongly advise against it.
There's some mentally graphic potential images that come out.
There was a pedophile who pursued me. We engaged together from the time I was 14 on, and it is not a book for children. In college, I supplemented my income. Well, it was my income as an exotic entertainer. So some very adult themes, really
Happens a
more.
lot, doesn't it? I mean,
Well,
that industry, let's call it. Well, I shouldn't say that. That industry is filled with people that have gone through those kind of pains and emotions, and then fall into drug addiction and alcohol and so forth. And that spiraling thing is not an uncommon story, is it?
well, what I found when I
Or am I
was
wrong? I
working
might
at
be
the
wrong.
clubs, I would see girls on campus. So I was in college while I was a dancer,
Ah,
and I
okay.
would see other girls, and we would just kind of slyly smile and, hey. Um, I knew one girl who was going to school to be a nurse. So, there are the ones who
Now,
are doing drugs or have a child, but there are actually those like me. I was taking 18 or 21 hours a semester in college, and 6 hours of those would
good
be
point.
honors courses.
Yeah.
And I worked at Walmart for 2 weeks, and I got my first paycheck. And I was like, there's no way I can live on this. Now, a couple of things I did want to just bring up about kids in foster care. They're trying to do a better job of when the kid turns 18. And instead of them just being out on the street on their own, they're trying to implement programs. But it's not commonly known, but anyone who's a ward of the state until they're 18, and I think it's the case across almost all the states, if not all of them, that person can go to college with or vocational school. Vocational school counts, and the tuition and fees are waived. College is
Oh,
free.
I didn't know that.
Now, when I took advantage of that,
That's
I still
smart.
had to pay my rent and pay for my books. I did receive scholarships, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. And after my first paycheck working at Walmart, I was like taking the course load that I did. I graduated college in 3 years.
Wow.
I needed a way to earn money quickly. And if you'll forgive me, it's a little bit of a crass joke, but what's the difference in a men's club between a waitress and a stripper? What's the difference? Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
2 weeks. The waitress sees what the dancer is making, and after 2 weeks, if you're cute enough to be the waitress, it's a fairly common segue to make. And I did, but these are adult topics, and I never wanted to see my book in a high school library.
Yeah, no, that makes
So,
perfect sense.
and
So,
my relationship with the pedophile, it lasted for 8-9 years. So
so this was a relationship. I mean, this was an ongoing, literally abusive, sexually in this case, abusive thing.
and
Wow.
it's difficult for me because at the time I thought I was making decisions. I mean, my childhood ended when my grandmother died when I was 7 years old. That's when my childhood ended. So um I I refuse to accept the label victim. I refuse, because I feel like I had some part to play in it. And I try to balance that with the
It's
fact
just the
that if
saddest
my
thing.
20-year-old daughter dated a man that was 28 years her senior, I would lose my mind. Like I would do whatever it took to end that. So for me, it started at 14, sexual at 15, but he would mail money to me while I was in Germany. because I didn't have any pocket money. I didn't have my parents sending money for me. So it's intricate. There are layers to it. So
Well, you see, none of your business. Beeswax says she was in the same situation. She had no friends, no family to trust, even to her children to. So, in that same thing, you become isolated. I mean, thank goodness the German family that was able to get you to pivot. But your whole journey was, yes, your mom was there. Yes, your mom was clean. Yes, but she had the schizophrenia and the issues, and your brother was younger than you. Your aunts and uncles sound like they were kind of in and out, although for a while they were a big support structure, good and or bad. But in a lot of it, you live in a darkened room without a flashlight, not knowing how to get out of this because you're all alone, right? At a young age. But you are enough. I'm going to steal her. You are enough, right? That's your whole message right there. Big part of it. Anorexia. I went through. Okay, here you go. See, it seems like there's a lot of. I assume men don't have the anorexia, the different ones, but we rebel out, we show out. We show externally what's going on by some of these things that we do to ourselves because we don't feel worthy. We don't feel like we're in the right body even. We don't feel like we're right. I mean, any of these you want to touch on as I'm poking through here a little bit? There's some nuggets going along right alongside your journey here.
No. I feel like we've had an awesome interview, and I believe we are touching lives. I really do.
I think so. I could absolutely, you could feel it. And especially with such interaction, we just went through, 30 comments just from one person, much less the other comments from a number of people and multiple comments from them. I did what I could to protect and keep my children out of foster homes. She said the issue you were talking about still exists today, where they say, okay, this child has A, so you get paid this. This child has A and D and Z, so now it's a higher level. Instead of giving them more care, it's a money grab. It sounds like they are fixing it. I know. I adopted a child. My first two born. Well, I raised 5 boys. Had 2 that were born, and then I adopted a young boy at 12. He'd been in the system his whole life.
Really?
Literally. Yeah, his mom tried to kill him. Incest. She was raped by her uncle.
Right.
And so when her mom first had him, when he was taken into the hospital, this is all before I ever knew anything, but I know the story. She literally, he had a 3, it's 0.08. He had a 3.0 alcohol level. There's no reason he should be alive, and razor blades so that he would bleed. And so, she later had her own family, and I guess was better, but imagine what he lived with.
Right.
And there's more to that story, a lot more, but I know the story of the foster system to a degree.
It's systemic. We're not going to a terrifying statistic. So 3% of foster kids take advantage of the college opportunity or vocational school. 3%. Yes, 3. And the U.S. prison population, they try to get the message out. A lot of them have, by 15, 16, 17, they already have a child of their own. 20% of the U.S. prison population is made up of former foster kids. 20%. That's 1 in 5.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be significant change, and I believe it's systemic. That until and social workers, as I mentioned earlier, they're saints because I mean their caseloads are insane. The burnout rate is, I mean, if you find someone who's able to do it 10 years, that's the anomaly. That's, I mean, they are just burnt out after a few years because it is so disheartening. And the lack of people adopting kids, I commend you for taking that boy in. And I'm
one of the
sure
most rewarding things of my life, and to have 2 older children. And the reason, real quick, I don't want to steal your story, but real quick, my second oldest son, who's the father to my granddaughter who I do the show with, he didn't want to be the youngest son anymore. So he, for years, begged me and literally, and it turned out it was the best thing that ever happened to all of our family. Everything.
But was there an acclimation period where the boy had to learn the rules and social dynamics? He had clearly never had healthy parental models or to mirror social behavior. In my book, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, I include the very first psychiatric evaluation that I had at 13. I include that at the back of the book, as well as the abuse diagram showing abuses. They are both, I put that in there so that people can understand from an adult's perspective what was going on with me. And in my book, each chapter, I use a quote from that psychiatric evaluation. So, yeah.
That's fascinating. But yeah, there is an adjustment, 100%. And honestly, at that point, most of the adjustment was from my side. His name's Chris. Well, he died in a drug overdose a couple of years ago.
Oh my God.
And suspicious because they didn't, the toxicology, anyway, it's a whole story. But yeah, you should never outlive your children. And that was devastating. And for my boys too. I mean, they were both pretty close. My second oldest, they were tight. I mean, they were tight. And so yeah, it's tough. And he died. Fentanyl is what they say. He would smoke.
So it wasn't intentional.
Well, no, he was in a bathroom in a park. And I guess he was smoking it, and they found the paraphernalia, but they didn't find any drugs in the system. So I don't know. So hopefully not. But there's still an investigation, but it's kind of like an LA County thing that is kind of lost in all the issues. But he had a lot of social issues that he had to learn. But we're all kind of chill. And honestly, I kind of grew up with my kids. I mean, to be honest with you, they grew me up. I mean, we used to sit in each of our rooms and play video games against each other. And we'd go into wrestling tournaments and look for sushi places. And we traveled all over and had a lot of fun, actually. But he joined the rugby team that my other boys were in. And so they got to go to Europe and travel because rugby's obviously a lot bigger over there. But so the adjustment really came, and honestly, it probably was a lot easier than I ever thought about because of my son, Austin, not me. I mean, I was there, I was part of it, but Chris was very standoffish in that I was an adult, and his world was not looking at me, my world, as something good. Now it ended up being that way, and everything was great. And then years later, I mean, we're talking about being in their 40s now, right? So years later, stuff happens, and I don't want to get into all that, otherwise I won't be able to talk. But there was an adjustment, but I don't think I had a fair analysis of that, because we didn't want a baby, we wanted a 12-year-old, an older
That's
child.
commendable.
So,
That is so admirable. If
Well,
more
yeah,
people,
yes.
if more people would step in and allow an adolescent into their life, babies get adopted, the older kids don't, and they age out of foster care, and they couch surf and start making bad decisions. And if somebody can't foster, they can be a mentor to a kid.
Older brother. What's my best friend out in California? It's called Big Brother, Little Brother, or something like that. He's part of a program, and they adopt a younger brother, and you're their older brother, and you do stuff. And, you have a relationship. That's a program, right? That's one. Joe loves it.
Another Children's Protective Services, you go through a background check, but you get assigned a person, a foster kid to work with, and
mentor.
Exactly. And you contact them. It's really not a lot of work.
Rewarding as hell.
Yes, but you also have to understand where those kids are coming from. You have to understand that they don't have good role models. They don't know how to behave or how to act. You have to really be compassionate and non-judgmental, patient. Absolutely. I mean, my 13-year-old self, I didn't know how to behave in the Smith family. And it wasn't just on me. And on my website, Unbroken Caldwell, on the document section, there's a part where the psychiatrist says that there are issues within the family that are affecting the placement. So I felt gratified. So I didn't get my case file until I was 20, and you have to request it. But one thing I would love, so Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines is the firsthand account, but I have all of these documents, the psych evals, therapist reports, foster mother reports. I even have letters that I wrote to my best friend, later best friend, from when I was in Germany, and put these together, and you have Unbroken, the case file. So firsthand account, and then the clinical documentation. So I would love for it to get adopted into psychology or counseling programs for early childhood trauma, with social workers, the training that they undergo, juvenile probation, things like that. Just to help people understand what it's like to live a life that's marred by generational trauma, mental illness, just everything. And my book it's not easy to read, because I'm unflinchingly honest. So yes, but it is ultimately about hope and inspiration and surviving against almost unsurmountable odds and coming out the other side and being stronger for it. Yes,
coming out the other side unbroken. That's
exactly.
Because that's not an easy. That is more of a rarity, especially in your extreme. Let's just say the bad stuff when people grow up in that situation. But you're the gold medal winner of the bad stuff. I mean, we're hearing about things that
but
somebody
it's
may have
not a competition, and nobody should ever compare trauma to another person's trauma. I discourage
Fair.
that because
Fair.
for that person, it was painful. It marred their life. It's impacted who they are. It's pain. Pain is pain. And I would never want to diminish anyone's pain.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, this has been, everything is advertised. I told you I've been looking forward to this for quite a while, and thought I would pick up on things and be able to contribute, but more picking up on things than contributing, because this has been a very compassionate and important subject that right at the end here, now we're getting into this whole discussion of the systems that are in place. Are they broken?
Yes.
Sorry to steal your name, your book name, not Unbroken. Are they broken? But we'll plug there, right? But at the end of the day, that's mental health is something I'm really trying to develop a channel in, or a lane within our playlist, a lane for mental health on Thursday. So I want to do more of this kind of stuff. But you just gave me this mind-blowing idea to also talk about the systems that are there, that are out there for people that are in the systems, or getting support, or children's services, because that's where a lot, I think 70%, right? 70% of kids have mental, deal with some sort of mental disorder. Has to come out of the childhood effects, and especially kids in the system. What did you say? 20% of all kids in prison come from the foster
care.
homes, foster
20% of the U.S. prison population are former foster kids.
You know what kind of goes along with this, and this is interesting to me. I'm just putting some different things together. We're talking about stats here. Did you know that since 1950, when they started tracking this, every school shooting has been connected to kids that they're on like antidepressants. I mean, we're now focusing on the gun, but what we should be and this is my only point about this is we should be focusing on the medications we're giving kids, to make them quiet. ADHD is a bad thing. Is it that bad where we got to set it? What's the word? Sedate somebody so that the teacher can have an easier way of educating them. But I'm using that example to turn around and say, okay, let's take a look at the systems, the foster care systems, child care, and not child care, but what are we looking at wrong here when 20% of the people in prison come from that system? That's a broken system. I mean, you're talking about 20% of the people in prison. That doesn't say how many of the percentage of people that have gone through foster care and those systems. Is it only 20% because there's not enough kids in the system that are called out? Is it 80% of the kids in the system end up I don't know if I'm making numbers up, but you see what I'm saying is our systems that govern our societies really are kind of, pardon my language, but fucked up. They're not looking at the right things. And I can see maybe missing stuff in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but we're too far along here now not to start putting pressure and having a dedicated day, a lane, to also not only be talking about the battles and writing about those and bringing that information, but also about the systems that didn't help us get out of that.
Exactly. And until we start putting money behind that system, until our children become a priority, this is going to continue and the situation is going to get exacerbated. Yes. So,
well, my newest, bestest buddy old pal and new neighbor-ish, more close than before, this has been the show that I've been excited about, as I said, 3 or 4 times just in the last 10 minutes. So yeah. But final thoughts. I mean, you have thousands of people still on, and most attended episode ever, even though we really do a lot in education and AI. This awareness being brought. You talked about touching somebody's lives, and I think we all both felt that today. What do you want to do to wave goodbye to your new fan club here, or the addition to your existing fan club here? And final thoughts.
So, final thoughts. Anyone out there struggling, having a difficult time, or who has struggled and they're trying to figure out a way to move forward, I want them to have hope that their situation can change. I want them to acknowledge their own power that they have over the situation, even if it's only how they view it, how they look at the situation. Every situation could always be worse. And flip that on its head. And instead of thinking it can't get any, instead of saying, it couldn't possibly get any worse, try to find those tiny slivers of hope and grace. There are teachers out there. I had a few make a tremendous impact on my life, and to just seek out that positivity, seek out your own control. And it starts with yourself. It starts with not drinking, not doing drugs, not self-medicating, and really just looking within yourself. Find your own strength to begin with, and know you are not alone. There are so many who have gone before you, and I am just one of many. Nunya Beeswax, thank you so much for participating. You brought up excellent points and shared truly private things with us. And I think the more that we share, the more honest we are, the more change we can expect and pray for. So my book, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, is my journey, my story. It's not the end of it, but it's my deepest hope to use it to change lives. So, and
yeah, I think that goal is achieved here, and just another step in your journey. Go ahead and finish up there.
I just want to thank the audience. I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's been incredible. This has truly been incredible. So thank you.
Why don't you give everybody a big wave? I'll throw you back in the green room. Hang out for me for a second, or come and say hi after I wrap up, if you don't mind.
Bye, guys. Visit me at unbrokencaldwell.com and Unbroken Caldwell on Facebook and still LinkedIn. I will respond if you reach out to me. So please do. Bye, guys.
That was beautiful. Great way to finish it. And I'm actually getting better at the timing. You know what? You're going to end up breaking, I think, records on 2 accounts. Most ever attended episode, people in the audience episode, and we're hitting right at that 2 hour and 40-minute mark. So I think we're gonna break also the time record as well. And just so many people staying on to soak up every word of this. And she's right. Nunya Beeswax, or I'm saying that wrong. Nunya Beeswax, yeah. Great ad, and back and forth with the volleyball, with the tennis volley. Beautiful. You could feel the energy, feel the effects that people are being touched, and that's what we're here to do in this show and in this episode. And Adrienne, I've been looking forward to this because and I agree what she says, but I'm still going to push back on you a little bit here. Pain is pain, trauma is trauma. If you feel it, you feel it, and don't take away. It's not a competition. I'm just, but sometimes you just really have to tip your hat. I just happen to have a beanie only today. Usually I wear a hat, but tip your hat. I mean, to be as strong and evidenced by your appearance on this show today, and your book, powerfully written. Like I said before, it's not a beautiful story. It's beautifully written, but not a beautiful story. But the recovery is part of that story. So it's got everything that, except for teenagers, there's some brutal moments in there, but you definitely want to pick that up and be able to heal thine self and be able to find ways to be worthy of people who want to be there with you, asking you the questions. Hey, is everything okay? You okay? And then waiting for the real answer, not just taking, yeah, I'm fine, no problem. What? Hold on. You need people like that in your lives, and or like Adrienne said, you need to be able to look at the situation and start asking questions back. What's going on here? You're in charge of your life at the end of the day, and unfortunately, it sounds a little more crass than it is. It's not that crass, but it sounds more crass than it is. And but at the end of the day, all you can control is what's in your world. Now, this is Insights and Straight Talk. My name's Rod Duff. I'm your host. I'm the founder and host of this show, Insights and Straight Talk with Rod Duff and producer Barbie. Check us out tomorrow. I'm going to be with Brandon. We're going to be talking about AI and automation, both. Are going to get into a little cryptocurrency and some Bitcoin. Earlier today, we were on the education. Right now, we're in a very serious subject situationally, where 70% of all humans, the human experience, is dealing with some sort of mental illness and issue. My hat again goes off to Adrienne, and of course, none of my beeswax. And I'm Rod Duff, and I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here, and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.